Everyone, it's Chris Griffin again. This is week 2 of going to school for real estate training. I took a bunch of notes, so I'll be referring to my notes so that way I can cover all the topics I wanted to talk about today. There was a lot of stuff talked about this week, a lot of new information, a lot of stuff I've never seen before. If you start reading the textbook ahead of time, reading it a couple of times, making your own highlights, making your own note cards prior, you're going to understand things a lot more. Some of the stuff we went over this week was appraisals, offers, closings, bankruptcies, the difference between what a market value is and the market price is. The classes are teaching you the test. They're not teaching you everything you need to know at this point about being a real estate agent. So a lot of that stuff you have to go out and you got to find a knowledgeable professional and ask them a lot of questions. Ask them every question. I've been asking them about what the appraisers do, what do the inspectors do, what do the loan officials do, the title companies do, the assistants themselves, if there's any people that work in the office that generate leads for you, all that stuff comprised together, because you're going to have to do a lot of stuff yourself depending on the company you go to. So it's a lot of questions to ask and a lot of information. So I've been writing it all down, been asking a lot of people about these questions. So I've got a couple interviews coming up with a couple of the key companies that I've heard about, learned about, that seem to be probably the best fit for me. So I'm going to go in basically with a pre-typed out interview for them. So I'm going to be interviewing them, asking them questions to make sure that it's going to be the best fit for me. I'm going to learn the stuff I need. They're going to have the continuing education that I need. The split's going to be what I'm asking for, or what I'm looking for per se. And there's a lot of stuff to cover. There's a lot of questions, so you got to make sure you got time, and you got to make sure that they're willing to sit down with you and discuss it, because if they're not willing to sit down and discuss your potential future with the company, then it's probably not one of the better companies to go through, or one of the managing brokers you want to work for, because they're not going to give you the time that you need to succeed. So I'm talking to a bunch of different managing brokers to figure out exactly which one's going to be the best fit for me. Talking to them, figuring out who's going to give me the time I need when I need it, not necessarily at 2 o'clock in the morning, but have the questions, the answers to the questions that I have when I have the questions pop up, and not have to wait 3 or 4 days, depending on the agency is how it's going to work. Some are going to have meetings seems like a couple times a week to discuss stuff like that. There'll be a lot of people in the office that'll be willing to help. Generally, from what I've been noticing, anybody in any office is pretty much there. They're going to help you. In turn, they're going to want your help when time is needed. So, checking over my notes here. So, I'm getting a little closer to deciding which agency I want to go with. I've narrowed it down to probably 4 or 5. There's so many out there, there's so many options, but I'm mostly worried about which agency is the first agency I should go through and why. And I'm writing this down about every agency. Is it going to be better for me because of the pros and cons on this one, or the pros and cons on this one? And then that way I can line them up next to each other and literally see on paper which one's going to be the biggest benefit for me. I know the harder I work, the more I should get in return, but the more effective you are at your hard work, the more you'll get in return. So I'm trying to figure out which agency is going to help me become the most effective and the most knowledgeable in the fastest time possible. Everybody's different. It may take you longer than others. It may take you less time. But I strategically ask questions that get me to the right answer without them doing all the work for me. So I've already done some of the legwork. I've already looked stuff up and tried to answer it on my own. So that should help. I've got some interviews per se coming up over the next week. So next week when I do a video, I'll talk a little bit more about that. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message, like it, share it, subscribe. Thanks. See you next week.